Are you able to say what the most expensive house you've sold is?
Yeah, I think so.
Money talks. We got Trevor here today. This is the real estate episode. So Trevor, you want to intro yourself?
Sure. My name is Trevor Zien. I am originally from Vancouver, Canada. Like Jesse.
All Canadian episode today.
And I've been in LA for 12 years. I went out here for school and got into real estate pretty quickly. Started doing it my senior year of college. Kind of realized that I never was going to have a corporate 9-to-5 kind of gig, and passed my real estate test my senior year and hit the ground running with it. And I've been in the business for about 8 years, and it's been a really fun, amazing way of connecting with people and making stuff happen.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, my first question. So when you got into real estate, your main thing was like, I don't want to have a 9-to-5 job?
So I guess I kind of realized that I never had the personality for a 9-to-5 job. I just never would fit in that mold. I kind of knew that pretty early on, even though I studied business in college, and I realized like, I don't want to do marketing. I
feel you on that. I was the same.
I can't, I don't think I can like do it. And so kind of by happen chance, I started playing tennis with a pretty prominent real estate broker.
Okay.
And what started off as more of a friendship kind of escalated into more of a business-minded relationship.
Okay.
And he encouraged me to kind of, get my license and work for him. And I was doing, when other kids had internships, I was doing open houses and trying to, make deals happen.
Okay.
So that was kind of that was always my game plan. And I remember, when everybody was stressing out about interviewing for jobs and whatnot, I had my thing dialed in because I knew that I was going to continue working with him and, for better or for worse, and just hit the ground running doing the real estate.
So you kind of saw someone doing it that was super successful. You were like, this is something I could see myself doing. You had that like person who was like doing it, and you were like, I'm going to try and like, this is what I want to do. This makes sense for me. Like that was,
absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And at that point, I felt like there was no going back. It was like, this is the only thing that I could do. Yeah. I had to commit to it, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I didn't take the opportunity to do internships like other kids did. I did 1 year, like my sophomore year. I absolutely hated it. I was like, what am I doing? This isn't for me. And so when I connected with this broker at the time, it kind of opened up my eyes to a different type of world. And I knew it was going to be a grind, and I knew it wasn't going to be necessarily predictable, but I figured that, hey, I'm young. I've got a lot to learn. Yeah. But if I just if I keep my head down and just stay with it, good things will happen.
Okay, cool. I like that.
And they did.
So because I hear a lot of people like real estate, to be a real estate broker, a real estate agent, people always say it's kind of an easy thing to get into. And that's why you kind of see a lot of people like, oh yeah, like this makes sense. Like a lot of people that I knew from home, like you sort of see them like wandering, they didn't know what to do. And then they end up being a real estate agent. And it seems like something that's just like easy to get into. It's all about networking and kind of like being a nice person, people knowing you, people trusting you. Is that accurate or like?
It's 100% accurate. I mean, it's probably the easiest barrier of entry to any business there is. I mean,
which is good and bad.
Which is good and bad. I mean, you can swing your arms in California and hit a real estate agent. I mean, it's like 1 out of 5 people, I feel like, are got their real estate license in some point. That's obviously not the statistic, but it's some crazy statistic. A very real statistic is though, 20% of only 20% of people that get their license end up renewing it. And then past that barrier, 20% of agents do 80% of the business.
Interesting.
So there's this perception or persona that a lot of people are, making, it's glamorous, and a lot of people are making a lot of money, and the
Yeah.
clients come easy, and they don't see the grind and the failure that defines most of the
Yeah.
real estate industry.
That makes sense. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, easy to try, easy to get into, but like if you
Then
really
what?
want to be successful and be like one of these top 20% of the 20% who continued, it's not that easy, and it's a lot of work. And like you've been 7 years grinding.
Yeah.
So would you say, okay, the first 1, 2, 3 years, was that kind of like grinding, not making a lot of money? Like how fast were you making good money?
100%. So my recommendation for anybody who's thinking about getting into the real estate industry, be aware that the first 3 years, I think that's a good kind of rule of thumb,
Yeah.
are going to be tough. You know, you're going to have ketchup and mustard sandwiches. Like you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah. And is
Normally,
it a salary that you had?
zero?
Or
So zero salary.
no salary?
You're
Okay.
fully 100% on commission.
Okay.
But it's a really tricky business to learn, because yeah, you pass the tests and you do the exams and you get your license,
Yeah.
but you, oddly enough, don't learn anything about the real estate business itself through the tests that you take. It's all useless knowledge.
That sounds
kind of
familiar.
like high school.
Sounds
kind
like every test in school ever.
exactly. So
Like
you
business school's the same.
you hold on to nothing. You hold
Yeah.
on to none of that information,
Yeah.
and it's and then you're left wondering, like, okay, you kind of learn by being in the business. And so
Yeah.
my advice to anybody who's trying to get into it is team up with someone, find a mentor, find
Yeah.
someone who's prominent, learn from them, do everything, be prepared to not make any money at the start, and then when you get comfortable, you'll start doing your own deals, and then you'll just take it from there.
Yeah. So you worked directly for this guy when you started, or was it for a bigger agency?
I worked directly for this guy when I
Okay.
started, and then when I felt it was time to move ship, after I learned as much as I could, I teamed up with a really prominent broker in the Palisades,
Okay.
a guy named Anthony, who owns a really awesome, successful boutique firm, and that was before I jumped on board with the agency where I'm at now. And I mean, it's a huge company. They just launched a Netflix show.
Yeah.
It's widely regarded as being one of the top brokerages in the world, and let alone Los Angeles.
So first of all, how is that working for like a public big agency? Well, the agency and the brand, and like obviously the show's gotten really popular. Your boss is pretty, like, people know him now.
Yeah,
Mauricio is his name.
Mauricio.
Mauricio.
Yeah.
So how is that? Because I'm sure like it's just a different experience.
It's a totally different experience. I mean, our company's filled with some of the top brokers in the world. I mean, we've got
Crazy.
David Parnes and James Bond, like the guys that are on $1 Million Listing, and some really, really well-known guys. And you're just completely surrounded by that environment. So you're learning from them. Their doors are open. They're your mentors.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing opportunity. At the end of the day, it's only the agent that really, makes it happen. But having like a big brand behind you,
Yeah.
that's recognizable, certainly helps establish some instant credibility.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's like people trust brands, and like, oh, well, they're not going to hire this guy. And then they have this big public thing and they're on Netflix and whatever. They're not going to hire this guy who doesn't know what he's doing. Right. So
Of course. So they see all the accolades. They see the brand power that we have in town, and it resonates. It resonates really well with people. So having that behind me,
Yeah.
and a group of agents that you can, learn from it has been invaluable for sure.
that's cool. Okay. I just want to we've talked about it, but I actually just want to go over like, so when you work for a big agency,
Mm-hmm.
the splits and stuff are different, right? Because obviously like they're giving
Yes.
you their brand and their platform. So normally if I'm just an independent agent, what are the numbers like percentage wise it's like 2.5% for the buyer agent and 2.5% for the seller?
That's right. So
Okay.
the standard is typically in Los Angeles is typically 5%.
Okay.
You can see 6%, but by and large, you'll see 5%.
Okay.
2.5 to the listing agent, 2.5 to the buyer's agent.
Okay.
And it's all negotiable, of course. But on the higher end deals, usually like north of 15, then it starts
15 million.
15 mil.
Okay, so big crazy house, 15 million. I don't want to give away 5% because
like I'm not giving $1.5 million away in
Right.
you know, of commission.
Yeah.
So we'll shrink it to 4 and only give $1 million away,
okay,
so to speak.
or whatever the
Depending
number.
depending on the numbers. But usually 15 is kind of the threshold where we see 5 to 4%.
Okay,
And then in certain cases we'll see 6%.
if it's something cheaper.
On a semi smaller deal.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you work for the agency, do you just split everything with them? Like, how does that work?
You do. So
Or can you say? Or
interesting. I don't know what I can say.
okay. I know they say some stuff on the show, right? Like they actually people, but I don't watch the show. But
I'm sure they do.
Okay.
But yeah, unless you have your own brokerage,
Okay.
you are splitting your commission to a certain degree
Okay.
with your brokerage.
Okay.
And the typical splits, depending on the agency, are usually 70, 80, and 90.
Okay.
You know, the top agents usually will get a higher split. If you're with the firm more, you usually get a higher split.
So
But
the
it's
top agents are getting, you're saying 70, 80, 90%?
So usually, like if it's a newer agent, they'll get 70.
Okay.
I would say that's kind of a rule of thumb.
Okay.
And some brokerages cap their commission at 80%. So even if you're one of the top dogs,
Okay.
80 is all you can get. But
80% of the 2.5.
You take 80.
That's pretty
the house
good.
gets
I would have
20.
thought it was way less, actually.
And then there's certain situations where you walk home with 90, 95%.
Wow.
Depends on the brokerage, but it's favorable. And what
That's
those
awesome.
fees, I mean, it covers your liability insurance. So if something were to go wrong, if you were to get sued, you know, God forbid, that would help with the cost.
Right. It's like having a back office, kind of like a little bit like where you're not on your own in this like crazy world. It's like
absolutely
there's people behind you.
100%.
Yeah.
And it goes like at the agency, they do an amazing, like the in-house marketing team is top notch. It's insane. So anytime I need something, I'll just call marketing or email marketing, and same day they'll have it for me, like drafted with visuals.
Cool.
It's so whether it's an email blast, whether it's something I want to print, whether it's a video, they'll have it covered. So that, you know,
Interesting. Yeah. So that's probably a good
worth
path for like anybody trying to like, that sounds worth it, you know?
100%.
Yeah. That's good. Okay. So how much do you think your success in the last few years is having been in LA and the market's gone so crazy and you're selling these crazy mansions and all that? Like if you were in like, I don't know, Indianapolis or something.
If I was in Indianapolis, I wouldn't be in real estate, I can tell you that.
Right. So you did this because you're in LA, right? Because you're like, oh, this market has the opportunity to sell $15 million houses. I'm going to be the guy taking a percent of that. Like
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it definitely makes it more exciting and more enticing.
Yeah.
I mean, the characters that you meet in this business are just absolutely wild.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell some of the stories.
Because you're also dealing with a lot of high profile, famous people.
You're dealing with celebrities. You have to sign non-disclosures, and it can get a little hairy sometimes.
Interesting. Yeah. So
the calls you'll get.
I think what's really interesting is that like your exact job in a place that's not LA is a completely different thing, because it's like the checks are way less, the people are really different, like, and it's all geographic, which like now more and more with like online businesses, and we sort of see this thing where it's like it doesn't really matter where you are in a lot of industries, like physically. And with yours, it's completely not that. It's like a completely different deal and job and like lifestyle and everything, you being in LA.
For sure. 100%.
Which is interesting.
Kind of like taking that LA to Indianapolis comparison. I mean, it just so happens that the west side of LA, which is predominantly where I do most of my business, on an average price of a home is between 4.5 and 5 million in this current market.
That's crazy.
Average.
I think people that aren't in LA are going to, hearing that, will be like, that's insane.
So if you're selling one house in LA,
Yeah.
you've got to sell 10 houses in Indianapolis to hit the same
Yeah.
number.
And it's the same work, kind of?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. they can't have the same approach in Indianapolis. It's
We're not hating on Indianapolis.
No,
This is going to be the anti-Indianapolis
Yeah,
podcast,
no.
but like I've never been there. I think it's a great place. I just randomly
I actually have a
selected.
good friend there.
The real estate
love
market
it.
might be
He's
hot.
the best
I don't
guy
know.
ever. It's simply just for a comparison.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the homes in Indianapolis are 450, 500K either. It's just basic napkin math.
Yeah.
But where was I going with that?
You're saying like it's not the same service for the agent there.
Yeah. So I think in LA you definitely have to it's curated and it's very a lot of attention to detail.
Yeah.
You're tied to every step of the process, and it takes a long time. I mean, every house is like your baby. Every deal is your baby, and it takes there's a lot of attention to detail that needs to happen.
Yeah. Are you able to say like what the most expensive house you've sold is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've sold this year I've sold $11.5 million home, which was exciting. Found it off market. It was actually for any Grace Kelly or old Hollywood fans out there, it was the Grace Kelly estate.
Wow.
I represented the buyer. And he's currently technically it was a teardown, if you can imagine that. One of the best pieces of property in the Palisades. On 3/4 of an acre. It's one of the largest bits of land in the Palisades too. We buy it for an 11.5. He'll probably spend $5 million on it. And when it comes time, he might live in it, he might sell. But if we sell it, it's gonna have a 20,
Crazy.
a 2 in front of it.
And then it's kind of like, so how did you like find that deal? You said off market, but how does that work?
So I was able to find that deal just through connecting with other agents, my network, calling around, asking anybody if they had anything coming up.
Because you had a buyer, basically?
I had a buyer.
So it starts with a relationship with people with money that are buyers that trust you to find them good things.
For sure.
So it starts with that. And then you're going, to the other agents, hey, I have this buyer. Can you find, like, I'm looking for something like this. And then someone passes you that deal.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
It starts with that. It starts with meeting the buyer. And this is kind of I like this example because that particular client has become almost like family. And that's one of the things I truly love most about the business is those meaningful relationships that you develop over time with people like that, like inspiring people who are super successful, who can teach you a lot. Met him at an open house. We connected really well, started showing him homes. A year later, we find this. And now I'm going to his kids' birthday parties and I'm chatting with him on the phone on a regular basis. And he's just turned into like a mentor and a great friend.
So it's like a lot of it's just being a people person, just being like talking to people, asking questions.
You inevitably spend a lot of time with your agent or your broker throughout the process. So it helps if you like them.
I found that too, like over the years I've worked with, hired a lot of different people, and like it's really hard to like find the right people. But the one thing now I'm just like, do I like them? Do I trust them? Do I like them? Because it's like, you got to talk to these people, whether they're just like, editing video or doing sales calls or finding you a house. Like you just got to talk to these people. So it's like, do you like their vibe?
Yeah.
Do you trust them? And that's what it comes down to. It's like, I'm looking for a house and I got to call you all the time, it's like, are you cool?
Yeah. And it often doesn't come down to, is this person the most qualified?
Yeah. No one really cares. Like
at the end of the day, it pays to be known in this business.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to be known.
Yeah.
Because that's what gets the call. That's what gets the meeting at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's all about meeting people. It's all about going on those appointments. And if you're known, if you're like a brand name, then you've made it.
And then also, so like this particular client, he buys the $11.5 million house. And then, like you said, like he might live there, he might flip it. And then like, who's he going to call when he wants to sell it for 20? You're the guy again.
Exactly.
And then he's probably buying something else. So it's like, these clients do give you like repeating business, right? And it's like, once you find someone who's buying $10 million houses, they're going to keep in that world. So it
can be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Certainly. And part of that is, yeah, maintaining your relationship with your clients.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the best parts of the job.
Yeah.
Because if you like them, I mean, there's some, don't get me wrong, there's some people where the deal's done and I'm like, oh my God, I never, like, I think I just lost 5 years of my life like, dealing with this guy. I never, like, I'm blocking his number.
That's
like
fun.
that kind of thing. Like, I'm scared. But for the most part, you get lucky. At least I think.
Yeah.
You kind of know who you want to work with and kind of get their vibe right off the start.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you want to put your attention to and your time towards.
Yeah.
And yeah, but to your point, with 3 years, I think I've done four deals with this guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How many deals a year in total are you trying to do, or are you doing?
Usually doing about a deal a month.
Okay.
And
how many are you? So to get a deal a month, how many calls and people and all this stuff? Like, you're pretty much always talking to people and calling and trying to get new deals, and it ends up being a deal a month.
Yeah. And I'm happy to say that at this point, the business kind of is cyclical, or it can be, and it gets easier over time because you're getting more referrals, you're getting more repeat clients, and so it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And those first 3 years where you're grinding, you don't know who to call, you're like calling your dentist, like that. That kind of doesn't happen.
It's one of those funny things where, like, I've seen, like, people I know start off and it's like they're pretty desperate and you could tell.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this weird thing where they're like soliciting, like, hey, you want to catch up, grab a coffee? And you're like, and then you get there and they're like, so you looking to buy a condo? And it's like, it's really like inauthentic.
Like,
and then like the
100%.
ones that are successful like you, and it's like, you don't have to bother anyone and the deal comes to you. And that's like what happens in a lot of life where it's like, once you mate, it's like the rich get richer kind of, like things kind of like snowball.
For sure.
Like, you know, you don't have to bother people.
Yeah, I think the longer you're doing something, I don't want to say the easier it gets, but the more crafted the more you craft your craft.
Yeah.
And the easier things kind of start to fall in place.
Yeah.
But I do bother people all the time.
Yeah.
Just usually not people I know.
I was going to say, what's your approach? So like, I know that you're careful about that. So what is your approach?
So
because you're not doing the like, yo, you want to buy a condo? Like,
no. Hopefully not. If I do, stop me. But I'll have a buyer usually, and I know what they want.
Yeah.
And especially in this market, there's basically zero inventory. So the issue is, okay, how do I find what he's looking for? And so sometimes I'll drive on a street and I'll say, I think that house will work. I know the relative cost of the house. I know the size. I can look up all the info. I know what style he likes, and I'll knock.
Yeah.
Or I'll get their number. I have software where I can look up anybody's number. It's kind of creepy, but you got to do what you got to do.
Part of the game.
Part of the game. And I'll call them, or I'll write them a letter. Sometimes I'll write them a letter with a physical offer saying this is what my client will buy a house for. So it's like it's not necessarily a cold call, but it's like it's a warm cold call where I have the buyer for the house. I'm not saying, hi, my name is so and so, but I'm going, hey, my name's Trevor, and my client and friend really wanted me to reach out to you today because he's interested in purchasing your house now or down the road. He can be flexible to your situation, and if you're interested, or you will be, let's get a coffee. Something along those lines.
I think one of the most underrated skills in anything is just putting yourself out there. Like, people don't just like send emails, call, text.
For sure.
And it's like when you do any sales job, you build this like kind of like you just stop caring after a while. You know, it's just like this where you're not self-conscious about it. You're just like, I'm going to do my thing. And like, if I know I wanted to 10 people and that's the price I pay. And like, you get far doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you will get no, but like that kind of thing. And then eventually that's how we build it up.
For sure. I feel like there's in a lot of businesses, so much of it comes down to like numbers. Like, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. You have to get used to know.
Yeah, exactly.
If you didn't, like, if you don't have the skin to hear no all the time, find a different business.
Yeah.
Because for every 20 no's, there's a yes.
But it's funny because across all industries, salespeople get paid the most consistently. And I would put a real estate agent in that
Yeah.
bucket of salespeople. And there's a reason for it. It's because, like, you know, that's who makes the money for companies, for whatever. And it's like, you have to put yourself out there, and like you get paid to put yourself out there. And so it's just an interesting, you know, may as well get used to it and
For
do
sure.
it,
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing. So I was going to ask you, have you invested in any real estate with your own money?
I was in escrow in a place in Palm Springs
To live in or investment?
as an investment.
Okay.
I was going to Airbnb it,
Okay.
and I was in escrow earlier this year. I backed out because they're tightening the rules on short-term rentals,
Okay.
and there's a lot of bureaucracy that's kind of affecting that. So it was uncertain how that would unfold.
Okay.
But the goal, I think, ultimately is to buy as much real estate as possible, refi, buy more real estate.
Yeah.
So you have a portfolio that you can live on, and then have the sales business fuel the acquisition
Yeah.
side of the game.
I think it's a really interesting thing because everyone's talking about real estate. Like, you know, everyone's trying to get like the passive income and like, I'm going to buy this and rent it out and like cash flow. Like all these things are so hot right now.
Yeah.
But I think like someone like you has a really unique perspective because like your job is looking at things. So you will know what a really good deal is.
Yeah.
And all the specific things. So I'm curious like what you, because that's been my thing. I mean, we've talked about it. Like I haven't invested in anything real estate in my life and I've always wanted to, but it's like becomes this overwhelming thing. And like everyone always says like, just buy real estate, but it's like, but what do you buy? Like should you buy something to live in? Should you buy something to rent? Should you buy commercial? Should, you know, so what do you think like kind of the best approach to it is?
I think you want to look at your goals. You want to look at kind of do you want to live in it? Do you want to buy like a duplex or a triplex and live in one of the units and rent out the other two to help subsidize your mortgage? Are you looking at it as a place to live and to build equity over time? Or are you looking at it simply as an investment?
So strictly investment, like if you're saying I want to invest in something in real estate to make money, to make my best return, what would you think? Obviously there's specifics and like your thing, like you were going to do the Palm Springs rental and you pulled out because of like that law, but like what area would you say are some that are interesting to you?
So I mean, if you're looking for cash flow, I would look at an area like Palm Springs where you can kind of get that Airbnb rentability and generate, you know, on $1 million purchase, you can generate well over $100K a year, which will completely subsidize your mortgage and even in today's interest rate environment.
What do you think about the appreciation? Because that's something you always hear people like,
That's what you sacrifice.
yeah, the cash flows, like, but then it's like your appreciation's not going to be as good as a house in LA, right?
That's definitely what you sacrifice if you do a play like that. So fundamentally, you kind of want it all. My target investment would be somewhere in an area that will traditionally consistently appreciate over time, like a Santa Monica, like any area on the west side, any A chip or A plus or B plus area in Los Angeles. You know, you don't have to worry. Usually, even if there's a cycle or recession like there was in 2008, if you hold on to your asset for more than 6 years, the numbers show that you're not going to be underwater if you can just hold.
Yeah.
So no one lost money in real estate unless they had to sell.
Right.
And that's what you have to be careful about. But going back to the investment, so to speak, I think what you want to do is buy something that you can add value to in an area that's going to appreciate. So buy something that you can fix up. Buy something that you can, if you're buying an investment property, it's awesome if there's no tenants in place. So you don't have to worry about the turnaround or kicking tenants out and
Right.
dealing with that to to fix up
Because
the
you could, if you
units.
buy something with tenants, they might be locked in at a low rent and you can't kick
Absolutely.
them out.
There's
And then,
rent control.
yeah.
But if you buy something that's largely vacant, it instantly gives you the opportunity to fix it up, and then you can set your own price. So those are really desirable properties. But
Would you say, for you at least, like you'd rather invest, like you live in LA, you'd rather invest in something in LA or around rather than like somewhere random, like in another state or something?
I would say so. I mean, you need capital to
Yeah.
invest in LA, but the returns, strictly from an appreciation standpoint, are incredible. I mean, I'll use one example. And you could consider this area a little bit more up and coming, although it's pretty these days. It's pretty well known, not pretty well known. It's very well known. It's very nice. But it's kind of like what Venice was before it exploded. And you deal with a little bit less of the issues that Venice has, but Mar Vista.
Okay.
I help clients purchase a home there in 2019, and they bought it for 3.13, and then flash forward 3 years later, having done nothing to the house, they sold it for 4.25.
Crazy.
So you're making a over $1 million spread.
And what's crazy, it's like
3 years.
30%, but they probably only put down 20% in the first place, which would be like 600K.
So this is wild. They put down, I think they put down 30 to 40%,
Okay.
but interest or an interest only loan. And I remember,
What does that mean? Interest only loan?
I'll get into that later.
Okay. I like it.
So their mortgage payment, principal and interest, or interest and property tax, so everything combined in, was $5K, which
Okay.
is unheard of. I think back then it was like a 3%,
Okay.
3% loan, but it's if you're paying $5K a month on something that's $3 million and you're going to grow it to $4 million in 3 years. I mean,
That's wild. Yeah.
It's a wild.
Was that investment property for them?
That was their home.
Okay.
That was their primary residence.
But then,
But I like it's a good case, just kind of a case in point in LA, where if you have a little bit of money to play with,
yeah.
the appreciation alone is going to turn, or has the ability to turn an investment, even if you're living in it, and not using it as
Yeah.
as a rental property to generate a great return.
Do you think this trend continues of things going up 30% in 3 years? Like, I know now we're in a weird time with real estate, with everything, really.
I don't think that we're going to see the same 30% growth now.
Yeah.
I think that the market's normalizing.
Yeah.
But I do think that on the other end of a cycle, when the market will repeat itself, and there will be those same gains in Los Angeles over time, just not in the near future.
Yeah. So a few years cool off,
Mm-hmm.
then the cycle comes back and it's going up again.
For sure. And so we may not see that kind of growth for a while, but
How does that compare to worse markets? Like, I don't know. Let's go back to Indianapolis, or, like, I don't know, not specifically, but like when you look at kind of like less prominent cities or other states, like how does that go? Does that go up more and down less? I mean, sorry, up more and down more? Like, is it kind of more rather than LA?
I think it's less. It's interesting. LA doesn't really dip too often. Only if there's like a very micro event, like a recession, like in 2019, where the housing market itself caused the economy to collapse. So that brought down prices in LA by, I think the number was like a third, by like 35%. When the market crashed, when the Great Recession.
Oh, okay.
That's when we really only saw like a dip in the LA marketplace. But if you going back to my point, if you were lucky enough to hold on to your asset for over 5 to 6 years, in that time, you weren't, regardless, you came out clean, you came out on
Interesting,
top.
yeah.
But yeah, things came down. Obviously, things came down then, and it did across the country. In other markets, I don't think that, I mean, there's certain markets that exploded over like COVID, for instance, like Austin and the Sun Belt
Yeah.
and
Miami,
Miami.
Nashville.
And that was kind of an anomaly. I mean, the factors that led to that are not normal factors, but in normal, so to speak, years, I think, markets don't really appreciate the same way that LA does, because they don't experience the same growth. They don't experience the same population influx. So there's less volatility, but I also feel that LA is more insulated on those investments or in those markets, like Detroit, or as an example, let's use Indianapolis again. Their cash flow wise, you're probably going to get more cash flow, but you're not going to see that same appreciation.
Right.
So
it balances out, kind of.
It depends. I mean, if you want to make a lot of money, LA is a good place to invest. But
Interesting.
Then again, you gotta have money to make money.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into the investment game and have some cash flowing investments and get started and build a portfolio over time, I think it's smarter to do that in other areas. Traditionally, the cap rates in LA aren't as strong as certain other areas of the country.
Cap rate is meaning the percent return cash on cash, basically.
Essentially, yeah. It's kind of like a quick way of analyzing
just for anyone
the return on your investment
who's not a real estate person. Okay, this is a great. This is something I love talking about, the rent versus buy discussion. I think like this is like one of the most, like, this conversation comes up all the time. Like, obviously we all grow up, like, or I did at least, hearing like, don't rent, you're throwing away money, like, buys things. So at least every month you're not throwing it away. You're paying someone else, you're paying your mortgage.
I agree.
And blah, blah, blah. But then as I get older, I have all these friends who are extremely successful, multimillionaires, who are like, no, I just want to rent. And they're kind of right in some ways. And the buying thing, and my opinion is that you run the numbers and either or could be better. Like, there's not a right or wrong. It literally comes down to the situation. And sometimes it's better to rent and sometimes it's better to buy. And it frustrates me when people say like the thing about like throwing away money, because like you have to live somewhere. So even if you buy a place, you're still living there. It's as if you're paying yourself rent. And anyway, we've talked about it a little. I'm curious like how you kind of think about that.
I mean, I think it's kind of going back to the example I said about the home in Mar Vista.
Yeah.
My clients were able to see a little over a third, 33%
incredible investment. Yeah.
I think it's all about investing in the right property. But at the end of the day, the LA market is going to appreciate over time. And yeah, you kind of are throwing away your money if you're renting. And it's getting harder to buy just because interest rates are not where they were.
Yeah.
They're kind of right at 6% right now. They've actually gone down a little bit over the last month or so. We predict that they're gonna kind of hover around the high fives for next year, or go into the 5 range, which is all things considered pretty good. And I think
historically not as
historically
good as a couple years ago, but
historically incredible.
Yeah.
And so they're never, they may never get down to 3% again.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities out there, and there's going to be a lot of deals to be had.
Yeah.
And if you can find the right one and you're comfortable with that monthly payment, then yes, invest in something.
Yeah.
Because you're, at the end of the day, you're building equity, and that's one of the best ways to build wealth in this country. You can do a lot. There's a lot of avenues with that. You can roll it into you can 1031 exchange it into something else. You can cash refinance. You can refinance, and there's a lot of different tools you can use to kind of maximize your position in your house. But I love the idea of building equity, having something to fall back on,
But you agree that sometimes it's better to rent.
So
my kind of thing is, I think why buying is good for most people is because it's forced savings. So it's like very easy to understand, like save up some money. That's going to be my down payment. Now every month I'm paying this mortgage. It forces me to just like what my money's going to is equity in this thing that's probably going to go up over time. So that's like a good situation for most people. But I've seen a lot of situations where someone, not necessarily in LA the last few years, but other places, buys a place. It doesn't go up that much. They pay their mortgage, and for let's say 5-8 years, their house has not gone up. Now they have property taxes, your door breaks, your roof breaks. Like there's other costs that people don't really talk about. And there is many situations where you would have been better off renting, where your rent might actually be less than all those costs and property taxes, and also the 100, 200, 300 grand that you put down 5-8 years ago, you could have done something else with. So that's kind of my take. And I also think like a lot of people scrape everything they have to put their down payment on a place where they could be putting that to like skills to get a better job or like things to make more money rather than just like, and I'm not talking about someone who has like $1 million and takes 100 grand and buys a condo. I'm talking about like someone who saves every penny and then puts that all to buy something, and then they can't improve themselves. They can't, take courses, go do other things. Like, so that's kind of my take. It's like situational.
I don't think it's a great job to overextend yourself on a purchase.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely paramount that you understand the finances. And when you're looking at your mortgage payment, you want to understand, what the property taxes are and what the insurance costs and what everything looks like on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that number.
Yeah.
I do think that there's probably less or places in the country where it makes less sense to buy.
Yeah.
From like an appreciation standpoint. Especially if if you need liquidity to kind of get into different areas and grow your business, so to speak. I feel like there's a lot of young entrepreneurs and like crypto guys. Yeah. Like, why would I buy a house when I can take that, use that liquidity to make more money?
Yeah. But that didn't work out well for a lot of people.
For a lot of guys. No, of course not. But there's, if you're, I think that.
Like I've met people who have like $100 million who rent.
Yeah.
Which is which sounds crazy.
That does. I mean,
then they have no headaches. They don't your door breaks, you just text the landlord or whatever. You're not a homeowner, which is kind of a job in itself.
Although I think if you have $100 million in the bank, you probably have a team of people that will take care of all of that. But,
and also another point, which I've recently, it's like a lot of homes that are really nice in certain areas, there are no rentals. Like you can't just, a condo like in a big city, like, there's rentals, you can buy whatever. It's kind of all the same, but it's like you can't rent a big house in the Palisades that easily.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot. It's funny. I actually just came from one. I'm renting out a $45,000 house in the Palisades right now.
$45,000 a month.
$45 a month.
Wow. That's pretty common, right?
It's on
a crazy number.
It's on the higher end.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful new construction 7,000 square foot house. So, in one of the best parts of the Palisades.
So there you go. So the person renting that, a lot of people might say, well, they should just buy, but
Right. And a lot of people that are renting that are like doing it because they're upgrading their house or they're getting a feel for the Palisades and they're coming from the East Coast. But if you're spending $45K a month on something, you should buy.
But
that's my thought.
Yeah.
And if you can afford it, then buy something that's just traditionally going to be a good investment. Don't go out and buy there's some rules of thumb that really go a long way in real estate. Don't buy the most expensive house in the street. Buy something that you can add value to. Okay. And location. So if you follow
those like old tales are true.
Oh yeah.
They're there for a reason that people saying.
Absolutely. They're kind of the best advice that I could give anybody who's looking at a house.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you can, going back to why I think it's a good idea to buy a house. Yeah, it will appreciate over time in most markets. Yes, you are building that equity. You can do a lot with that equity, even if you don't stay there the entire time. You can pull from it. And on top of it, if you can find something that you can add value to, then when push comes to shove, you can make a killing. A killing. If you buy a house for $1 million And let's take an example in the Palisades. Let's say you're buying a fixer that's 2,500 square feet for 2.8, and you put 500 in, then you can likely sell for 4. So, I mean, that's more of a flip play, so to speak.
Yeah. Then you're kind of in the business of construction and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that may not.
Just a different path.
It's a different path.
But I think what you're saying is really interesting is that like there's different ways to do it. And like what's cool about all the stuff you're talking about is it's like this affects like a big percentage of people are thinking about this on different levels. It might not be a $10 million house, but like rent, buy, what area, all this stuff. So I think it's really interesting.
For sure. And I guess, at the end of the day, it comes down to what makes the most sense for your finances.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not my belief to just say buy real estate and only buy real estate.
Yeah.
I think that you should have a diversified portfolio.
Yeah.
And real estate's a great hedge, a great asset within that portfolio, and a great hedge against other investments.
What's there's some like law of like, basically, I forget what it's called, but how long something's been around is likely how long it will be around.
Yeah.
And real estate's kind of as old as time, right? Or not as old as time, but it's compared to crypto or some, some newer stuff. It's like real estate's been making people money for a long time.
100%.
It probably will continue to.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
There's still X amount of land on the earth, and until the earth is uninhabitable,
right? It's truly like some of the only finite kind of asset that you can touch and feel.
Yeah.
That there's a limited amount of. You can't print more real estate.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it in the multiverse, which is interesting.
That's another episode.
Yeah.
All right. That's it's been awesome, man. Thank you for coming on.
Of course, man. Thank you.
And it's been a good little real estate convo.
Yeah, man.
So that's
Thanks for having me.
That's the episode.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.